Welcome back to Secrets Exposed. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. You're the reason these stories worth sharing. Tell us where you're watching from, city or country. We're amazed by how far these tales reach. To get daily new and amazing stories for you, subscribe our channel and press bell icon. All right, let's begin. The rainforest pressed in on every side, thick and suffocating. Giant leaves dripped with rain, the air heavy with humidity. The smell of wet earth and rotting foliage clung to every breath. Major Adrian Kale leaned over a mud-stained map table inside a dimly lit command tent. The light from a single lantern swung above, throwing restless shadows across the taut canvas walls. Outside, soldiers moved quietly, their fatigues damp, rifles slung against their chests. The steady hum of insects filled the night, only broken by the low thrum of generators and the occasional barked order. Adrian's jaw was clenched, his eyes fixed on the red lines across the map. Enemy routes, checkpoints, extraction zones. Every detail mattered. Out here, mistakes weren't forgiven. That happened. A burst of static tore through the tent. The radio on the side table hissed violently before a sharp, urgent voice cut through the noise. Adrian straightened, his hand instinctively reaching for the headset. Major Kale, copy. Do you read? He pressed the receiver to his ear. Kale here. Go ahead. There was a pause, heavy with distortion, and then the words came. Words that made his blood run cold. Your son, Lucas Kale, is in emergency surgery. Multiple fractures. Condition critical. Adrian's eyes widened. His chest locked as if all the air had been sucked out of the tent. The map beneath his hands blurred as his fingers dug into the edges, crumpling the paper. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. The voice on the radio repeated, clearer this time. Lucas Kale is in surgery. Multiple fractures. It's bad, Major. Very bad. Adrian's throat worked, but no sound came. His soldiers outside kept moving, unaware that their commander's world had just shattered. His mind scrambled. Surgery, fractures, critical. He had left his son behind in what he thought was safety. Celine, his ex-wife, was supposed to care for him. But now, the radio crackled again. The next words cut even deeper. Before he went under, your boy. He whispered something. He said, Mom's man shut me in the attic. The tent went silent. Even the rain seemed to stop. Adrian's grip tightened on the headset until the plastic creaked. His pulse hammered in his ears. He saw Lucas's small face in his mind, bruised, terrified, whispering those words. Mom's man, Celine's boyfriend. The coward living in his old house, in his son's life. The canvas door flung open. Colonel Marcus Vaynar stepped in, his broad frame filling the tent. His weathered face scanned Adrian's expression, and he didn't need to ask. He knew. What's going on? The colonel demanded. Adrian lowered the headset slowly, his voice rough. It's Lucas. He's in surgery, beaten, locked in the attic. Vaynar's jaw clenched, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the table. For a moment, he looked ready to argue, but then he slammed his fist down, rattling the lantern and the map. Forget the mission, Vaynar barked. His voice was iron, absolute. This operation is over for you. Blackhawks fueled. Get back now. Adrian stared at him, heart pounding. For years, duty had always come first. Orders before everything. But not this time. His son was fighting for his life. And the monster who hurt him was waiting back home. The rain pounded harder on the canvas roof, drumming like war drums. Adrian tore off his headset, shoved the map aside, and grabbed his gear. His hands no longer shook. They were steady, lethal, ready. The sound of rotor blades roared outside the tent, slicing through the humid air. Soldiers turned their heads as Adrian strode past, his face carved in stone, eyes burning with something they had never seen before. He wasn't just going home. He was going to hunt. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and desperation. Bright fluorescent lights hummed above, casting harsh shadows across pale walls. The automatic doors slid open and slammed shut with every new rush of gurneys, every frantic arrival. But in one room, behind double doors marked operating theater, everything narrowed to a single battle, a child's fight to stay alive. Lucas Kale's small frame lay on the table, his chest rising faintly under the sterile blue drape. His body was a patchwork of bruises, his left arm bent unnaturally, his ribs purple with blunt trauma. The mask over his face fogged faintly with each weak breath, but even that was irregular. Monitors beeped in erratic rhythms, each sound making the surgeons tense. BP dropping, a nurse shouted. Dr. Elena Frost, the lead surgeon, leaned over Lucas's chest. Her face was half hidden by her surgical mask, but her eyes were sharp, burning with focus. Clamp that artery. Now. Her gloved hands worked swiftly, moving as though she had done this 1,000 times. Yet her shoulders betrayed the weight of this particular patient. This wasn't just another case. This was an 8-year-old boy who had been brutalized. Another nurse whispered from the corner, not to the doctor, but to herself. Multiple fractures on a child this age. This wasn't an accident. Elena heard it, but she didn't respond. Not yet. First she had to keep the boy alive. Outside the OR, the corridor was tense with whispers. A younger nurse, pale and shaken, leaned against the wall, gripping a clipboard. She had been the one to admit Lucas, to see him conscious for a brief, fleeting moment before the anesthesia took him under. She couldn't shake the sound of his voice, weak, trembling, but deliberate. She replayed it in her mind again and again. Mom's man shut me in the attic. Her pen had fallen from her hand when she heard it. She had crouched beside his bed, trying to calm him. What do you mean, sweetheart? Who hurt you? But his eyes had fluttered, his lips barely moving, and then he was gone, lost to the drugs as the doctors wheeled him inside. Now she pressed her back against the cold wall, whispering the words out loud for the first time. Mom's man attic. It felt poisonous on her tongue. Back inside, Elena Frost issued another order. We need blood. Type O negative now. The staff moved in unison, the urgency sharpening the air. Sweat rolled down one nurse's temple, her hands steady despite the tremor in her breath. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The monitor blared, dipping into danger, before stabilizing again. Each beep echoed through the sterile silence like a judge's gavel. Finally, Elena leaned back, her gloves soaked, her brow furrowed. We've got him stable for now, she muttered, her voice low, tired but firm. She glanced at the boy's fragile body. Too small, too vulnerable. But he'll need observation. And her eyes hardened. Someone needs to explain how this happened. The door swung open. The nurse who had heard Lucas's whisper stepped inside, hesitant, her eyes darting to the boy on the table. Her voice cracked as she addressed Dr. Frost. Before he went under, he said something. Elena looked up sharply. What did he say? The nurse swallowed, gripping the clipboard tighter. He said, Mom's man shut me in the attic. The words hung heavy in the sterile air. Even the steady beep of the monitors seemed to pause. The other nurses froze, exchanging glances of disbelief and anger. Elena's eyes narrowed, her gaze flicking back to Lucas, her voice trembling with restrained fury. Then this wasn't just neglect, she said. This was deliberate. Someone did this to him. In that moment, the room filled not just with the fight to save a child, but with the first sparks of justice. Everyone present felt the same thing. Disgust, outrage, and a gnawing question that refused to leave them. What kind of mother allows this? As Lucas was wheeled into recovery, the hallway lights flickered overhead. Outside the hospital, storm clouds gathered, lightning splitting the night sky. And though the world beyond remained oblivious, inside those walls, a secret had been spoken, one that would unravel everything. Lucas had named the monster, but he hadn't yet named the hand that guided it. The thrum of rotor blades ripped through the humid night, shaking the trees of the rainforest as the Black Hawk lifted off. Mud and leaves scattered across the camp, soldiers shielding their eyes as the helicopter rose. Inside, Major Adrian Kale sat strapped to a bench seat, helmet off, staring into the dark horizon. The jungle shrank beneath him, but its noise was nothing compared to the storm raging in his chest. The headset clamped over his ears carried the clipped voices of the crew, but their chatter was distant, muffled, drowned beneath the single phrase pounding over and over in his mind. Mom's man shut me in the attic. Adrian closed his eyes. For years he had faced firefights, ambushes, missions where every step might be his last. He had seen men torn apart, had carried brothers home in body bags. But nothing cut as deep as the thought of his little boy, Lucas, trapped in the dark, crying for help no one came to give. Colonel Marcus Vaynar's voice still echoed in his head. Forget the mission. Get back now. Vaynar had never abandoned a mission before. That order alone told Adrian how dire this was. The helicopter jolted as it banked north. Across from him, a young soldier stole glances at Adrian. The major's face was carved in stone, but his fists trembled against his knees. Rage and helplessness battled beneath the surface, leaking out in the slightest twitch of muscle, the tightness of his jaw. Adrian stared out of the open side door at the jungle fading into black ocean. The searchlights cut a path through the storm clouds, rain slashing sideways against the fuselage. He remembered Lucas at 5, running through the yard with a toy plane in his hand, shouting, "Daddy, look, I'm flying." That same boy was now under surgical lights, bones shattered, whispering betrayal through broken lips. The crew chief leaned in, shouting over the roar, "ET, 3 hours, Major. Weather's rough." Adrian gave a tight nod, not trusting his voice. He pressed his palms together, lowering his head, fighting for control. Soldiers weren't supposed to crack, but fathers weren't supposed to bury their children. He thought of Celine. His ex-wife had begged him for custody years ago, claiming she could give Lucas stability, while Adrian's life was chaos. He had agreed, for Lucas's sake, not hers. And now, her stability had ended with their son on an operating table. Lightning flashed outside, blinding white for a second. In the flicker, Adrian saw Celine's face in his mind, mascara streaked, lips trembling, the woman who once said she loved him. He saw her new man, Victor Drennan, smug the first time they met, shaking his hand with a grip that told Adrian everything he needed to know. Weak men hid cruelty behind charm. Did he do it? Adrian thought, his jaw clenching harder. Or did Celine let it happen? The helicopter shook violently in turbulence, snapping Adrian back. He grabbed the overhead strap, steadying himself. Every jolt felt like the universe itself urging him forward, pushing him faster toward the confrontation that awaited. The crewman tapped his shoulder. "Major? You all right, sir?" Adrian didn't answer. He didn't have to. The fire in his eyes said enough. The Black Hawk surged through the storm, miles falling away beneath its blades. Adrian's heart pounded in rhythm with every chop of air, each beat hammering the same vow into his mind. He wasn't just going home. He was going home to make someone pay. And in the silence between thunder and rain, he swore it. When he stepped off this bird, nothing would protect the man who hurt his son. The automatic doors of St. Catherine's Hospital slid open with a hollow whoosh, letting in the storm. Rain clung to Adrian Cale's uniform as he stepped into the sterile brightness of the lobby. His boots echoed against the tile floor, drawing a few wary glances from nurses rushing past. He didn't look like a visitor. He looked like a soldier entering enemy territory. At the reception desk, a clerk tried to intercept him. "Sir, visiting hours are over." Adrian's eyes locked on hers, cold and unwavering. His voice came out like gravel. "Lucas Cale, my son, where is he?" The clerk faltered, swallowing hard under the weight of his gaze. She pointed down a hallway, without another word. Adrian strode past, his wet boots leaving a trail behind him. The hallway smelled of disinfectant, sharp and unnatural. He passed doors labeled ICU, recovery, pediatrics. Each step slowed as his chest tightened. Then he saw it. Room 304. Inside, Lucas lay small and fragile against white sheets, tubes snaking into his arms, monitors blinking steadily above his bed. His face was pale, lips dry, chest rising and falling with shallow rhythm. Adrian froze in the doorway. The boy looked nothing like the lively child who once ran through the yard with toy planes. This was a shadow, beaten, broken, betrayed. He moved forward slowly, as though afraid the moment might shatter. Kneeling beside the bed, Adrian reached out and brushed a lock of damp hair from Lucas's forehead. His fingers trembled, but his voice was steady. "I'm here now, son. I'm here." Lucas didn't stir. The machines answered in his place, beeps, hums, the steady rhythm of survival. Adrian swallowed hard, fighting the sting in his eyes. He was a soldier who had survived firefights, ambushes, and nights where death hovered inches away. But nothing in the jungle had prepared him for this, for the sight of his son lying broken. Behind him, a soft voice broke the silence. "Adrian." He turned. Celine Ward stood in the doorway, her face pale under streaks of mascara. Her hair was tied loosely, strands falling over her cheeks. She looked fragile, grief-stricken, but something in her eyes flickered, something too quick, too nervous. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her arms folded tightly across her chest. "They only allow." "I'm not leaving." Adrian's voice was iron. He rose to his full height, towering over her. "What happened to him, Celine?" Tears welled in her eyes instantly, but her body language betrayed her. Instead of stepping toward the bed, she shifted backward, as if cornered. "I don't know," she stammered. I found him like that." Victor tried to help. The name hit Adrian like a blade. "Victor." His jaw locked. He took a step closer, his shadow stretching across the floor. "Where is he?" Celine's breath hitched. Her hands tightened against her arms. "Adrian, please, you don't understand." His glare cut through her words. "Where is he?" Her lips trembled, but her eyes darted, not toward Lucas but down the hall, toward the exit. It was fleeting, but Adrian caught it. That single look told him more than her words ever could. Adrian's chest burned with fury, but his voice remained calm, controlled. "Stay here." He turned, his boots striking the tile with renewed purpose. Celine didn't follow. She lingered at the doorway, eyes fixed on Lucas, mascara streaking her cheeks. But her gaze carried no warmth, only a cold dread that made Adrian's blood run colder. As Adrian stormed down the hall, nurses pressed themselves to the walls to let him pass. He didn't see them. His mind was locked on one thought. Lucas had whispered the truth. "Mom's man shut me in the attic." And Adrian was about to face that man. The storm had followed him. By the time Adrian Kale pulled up to Celine Ward's suburban house, rain streaked the windshield in silver ribbons. The quiet neighborhood was drowned in the roar of thunder, the kind that rattled windows and made streetlights flicker. The house itself stood under the pale glow of a porch lamp, warm and inviting from the outside. But to Adrian, it looked like a trap. He stepped out of the car, boots sinking into wet gravel. His uniform clung to him, rain plastering his shirt to his chest, but he didn't care. Every step up the walkway felt heavier, like the air itself was warning him away. The front door creaked open before he could knock. Celine stood there, framed by the warm light inside. Her eyes were swollen from crying, mascara smeared into dark streaks. She looked fragile, pitiful, the image of a grieving mother. But Adrian didn't miss the way her hand clutched the edge of the door, knuckles white, as if holding back something more than grief. "You shouldn't be here," she said again, her voice soft, breaking under the weight of tears. Adrian's stare didn't waver. "Where is he?" Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted toward the hallway behind her, and just for a second, Adrian saw it. The flicker of fear, the glance toward something or someone deeper inside the house. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice pleading, "please, let's talk first. You don't understand what's happening." But Adrian brushed past her, his wet boots tracking across the wooden floor. The air inside smelled of candle wax and damp wood. The living room was spotless, too spotless. A blanket folded perfectly over the couch, picture frames arranged neatly on the mantel. It felt staged, like a set prepared for someone else to see. The silence was crushing. No television, no sound of footsteps upstairs. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the storm pounding against the roof. Adrian stopped in the center of the living room, scanning. His soldier's instincts kicked in. Every detail mattered. The shoes by the door, one pair too large to be Celine's. A half-empty glass of whiskey on the side table. A jacket draped carelessly over a chair. Victor Drennan was here. Adrian turned slowly toward Celine. Her arms were wrapped tightly across her chest, shoulders trembling. But her eyes, they weren't on Adrian. They were fixed on the staircase leading down to the basement. Adrian followed her gaze. The door was closed, but faint light spilled out from the crack at the bottom. He took a step forward. Celine's breath hitched. "Don't," she whispered, almost too soft to hear. Adrian stopped, just long enough to look back at her. Her face was pale, lips trembling, but there was something else beneath the tears. Not grief, not love, guilt. He turned back, his hand closing around the basement door handle. The wood was slick beneath his palm, as if the house itself resisted him opening it. For a moment, thunder cracked so loud it shook the walls. Adrian pulled the door open. The basement stairs descended into dim yellow light, shadows stretching across the concrete floor. And, at the bottom, standing motionless, was Victor Drennan. His shirt was rumpled, collar torn. His hands were stained with paint, or something darker, and his face was pale, eyes wide with the look of a man already cornered. Adrian's pulse thundered in his ears. The storm outside roared, but inside the house, silence swallowed everything. The man who had been living in his son's world, the man Lucas whispered about with his last strength, stood before him now. And Adrian stepped onto the first stair, his voice low, steady, and lethal. "You're going to tell me exactly what you did to my boy." The basement air was damp, carrying the faint smell of dust and old concrete. A single bulb swung lazily overhead, casting sickly yellow light across the unfinished walls. Shadows stretched long, twitching with every movement. At the bottom of the stairs, Victor Drennan stood stiff, like a man waiting for judgment. Adrian Cale's boots hit the wooden steps one by one, each thud echoing like a war drum. His eyes locked on Victor, never wavering. He had interrogated enemy combatants before, stared into the eyes of men who would kill without hesitation. But this was different. This was personal. Victor swallowed his Adam's apple bobbing. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Adrian, I didn't." Adrian cut him off, his voice low and sharp. "Lucas said your name. He said you shut him in the attic." His fists clenched at his sides, veins rising in his forearms. "So tell me why my son is lying in a hospital bed fighting for his life." Victor's breath quickened. His hands shook as he lifted them slightly, palms out, a pitiful gesture of surrender. "It's not what you think. I didn't hurt him." Adrian stepped closer, his shadow swallowing Victor's. "Then explain." "Now." The younger man's eyes darted to the stairs behind Adrian, where Celine lingered at the top. Her figure was half hidden in the doorway, mascara-streaked face peering down like a ghost haunting the scene. Victor's gaze lingered on her, and in that silence, Adrian caught it, fear. Not fear of him, fear of her. Victor's voice cracked. "She told me to do it." Adrian froze, the words hanging heavy in the basement. His eyes narrowed. "What?" Victor's breathing grew uneven. "Celine, she said Lucas needed to be punished. Said he was acting out, lying, trying to turn you against her. She told me to put him in the attic. I didn't want to, but she threatened me." From the top of the stairs, Celine's voice rang out, brittle but sharp. "Victor, stop." Adrian turned his head, his eyes piercing her through the shadows. Her hands gripped the doorframe, knuckles white, body trembling. She looked like a woman exposed, mascara streaked, lips quivering, but her eyes burned with something colder, something that stripped away the fragile mask. "Adrian, you don't understand," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "Lucas lies. He twists things. Enough." Adrian's voice boomed through the basement, silencing her. He turned back to Victor, stepping so close their faces nearly touched. "If you're lying to me, I'll know. And if you're telling the truth, then she's worse than you." Victor's knees buckled. He sank against the wall, burying his face in his hands. His voice came out muffled, desperate. "I didn't want to. God, I didn't want to. But she said she'd throw me out, take everything. I thought I thought it would just scare him. I didn't know he'd fall. I didn't know he'd break like that. His shoulders shook with sobs. Adrian stared down at him, his fury boiling but contained, focused. He had expected a fight, a denial, a monster to strike at. Instead, he found a coward crumbling under guilt. And above, he felt Celine's presence. Not the grief-stricken mother she pretended to be, but the puppeteer whose strings were starting to show. The storm outside cracked with thunder, rattling the windows. Adrian's voice was cold steel. So it was her. Victor looked up, tears streaking his face. He nodded once, violently, as if confessing would ease the weight crushing him. Yes, she made me. I swear it. Adrian's chest heaved. His fists tightened until his nails dug into his palms. Rage flooded him, not at Victor alone, but at the woman upstairs, the mother who had chosen cruelty over love. He turned slowly toward the staircase. Celine still stood there, frozen in the doorway, mascara running like ink, her lips parted but silent. For the first time, her mask cracked completely, revealing what lay beneath. Not grief, not fear, but a calculating coldness that had finally been caught in the light. Adrian's eyes locked on hers, and his voice dropped to a lethal whisper. You hurt my son. The words weren't shouted. It didn't need to be. They carried the weight of a father who had marched through war, a man who had nothing left to lose. Celine's face drained of color, and Adrian took the first step back up the stairs. Adrian's boots creaked against the basement stairs as he climbed, each step deliberate, heavy, echoing louder than the storm outside. Victor remained crumpled below, sobbing into his hands, his guilt spilling out in broken gasps. But Adrian's focus had already shifted. His eyes were locked on the figure at the top of the stairs, Celine. She didn't move, her back pressed against the doorframe, hands gripping the wood as though it was the only thing holding her upright. Mascara streaks carved down her cheeks. Her lips trembled, but her eyes betrayed her. They weren't pleading, not really. They were calculating, scanning Adrian's face for weakness, searching for a way to twist her way out. When he reached the top, they stood inches apart. For a long, suffocating moment, neither spoke. The storm rattled the windows, rain hammering against the roof. The smell of damp wood and candle wax filled the silence. Adrian's voice came low, steady, every word sharpened to a blade. He said it was him, that you told him to do it, that you made him lock Lucas in the attic. Celine's breath hitched. Her chest rose and fell quickly, as if she'd been struck. But then, like a mask being pulled into place, she shook her head violently, tears welling anew. He's lying, she whispered. Adrian, you know what he's like. He's weak. He would say anything to save himself. Adrian's eyes narrowed, his face unreadable. And Lucas? Was he lying too? Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked away, blinking rapidly, as if the very mention of her son scorched her. Her silence screamed louder than any denial. Adrian stepped closer, his shadow swallowing hers. Look me in the eye, Celine. Tell me you didn't do this. Tell me you didn't let him hurt our boy. Celine's hands trembled against the frame. Her lips quivered, her face twisted, not in grief, but in panic. Her voice cracked under the weight of her own excuse. Lucas makes things up. He twists stories. He knew if he said something, you'd come running. He always does this to me. The words hit Adrian like a slap. His fists clenched. His voice grew dark, thunderous. He's 8 years old. He's lying in a hospital bed with broken bones. And your first instinct is to call him a liar. Celine flinched. Her tears spilled freely now, but they fell too neatly, too practiced, as if she had cried this way before to escape blame. You don't understand, she choked. I was trying to keep control. He doesn't listen to me. He's always been difficult. You left me with him, Adrian. You left me to handle everything alone. What was I supposed to do? Her words hung in the air, twisted bitter. For a brief moment, the storm outside seemed to quiet, as though the world itself was listening to her confession. Adrian stared at her, his face unreadable, but inside, something broke. He had carried guilt for years. Guilt for leaving Lucas in her care. Guilt for believing she could provide stability. Now he saw the truth. It hadn't been weakness. It hadn't been a mistake. It had been betrayal. From the basement, Victor's voice drifted upward, cracked and hollow. She told me if I didn't do it, she'd throw me out. She said Lucas needed to learn his place. His sobs echoed in the silence. Celine's face twisted in rage, snapping toward the basement. "Shut up, Victor!" she screamed, her voice raw. The fragile mask shattered completely. Her grief-stricken act dissolved, leaving behind the venom of someone exposed. Adrian stepped back, his chest rising and falling with barely contained fury. He had seen enemies break before, masks shatter, lies unravel. But nothing compared to watching the mother of his son, the woman he once loved, reveal the monster she had become. He spoke slowly, his words like gunfire in the silence. "You don't deserve to call yourself his mother." Celine's tears stopped instantly. For the first time, she looked small, not fragile, not pitiful, but powerless. The thunder outside cracked again, louder than before. The house seemed to shake, and in that storm, Adrian made a silent vow. He would not let Celine bury her cruelty beneath excuses. He would drag the truth into the light, no matter how deep she tried to bury it. The war was no longer in the jungle. It was here, in this house, and Adrian Cale was ready to fight it. The storm outside howled, rattling the windows like an omen. Inside, silence stretched thin, suffocating the living room. Adrian Cale stood firm, his chest heaving with steady, controlled rage, while Celine Ward clung to the doorframe, mascara streaked, trembling under his gaze. Down in the basement, Victor's muffled sobs still bled through the open door. The sound of a broken man, guilty, cowardly, but no longer the monster Adrian expected. The real monster stood inches from him now. Adrian's voice was quiet, but the weight behind it could crush stone. "Say it, Celine. Say what you did to him." Her eyes darted, searching for escape. The storm lit the room in flashes of white, illuminating her face like a criminal caught in a spotlight. Her lips parted, but instead of confession came venom. "You think you're some hero," she hissed, voice cracking. "Flying back in your big helicopter, storming into this house like you still own it. Where were you when I needed you? Where were you when he drove me insane with his whining, his tantrums, his—" Adrian's fist slammed against the wall beside her, the crack of wood making her flinch. His eyes burned with fury. "He's a child, an 8-year-old boy, and you let that coward lock him in the dark like an animal." Celine's mask shattered fully now. The fragile, grieving mother was gone. What stood before Adrian was raw, twisted anger. "I did what I had to do," she snapped, voice sharp and jagged. "You left me with him, Adrian. You left me drowning while you played soldier in the jungle. He doesn't listen. He defies me. He's your son, not mine. Every time I looked at him, I saw you, and I hated it." The words tore through the room like shrapnel. Adrian froze. For a moment, the soldier in him disappeared, replaced only by the father, reeling from the revelation. She didn't just fail Lucas. She resented him. From the basement, Victor's voice wavered upward. "Adrian, it's true. She made me. She said Lucas needed to be broken. Said he had to learn obedience." Celine spun, shrieking into the basement, "Shut up, Victor!" Her voice was feral now, stripped of all pretense. "You pathetic coward. You couldn't even do one thing right." Adrian stepped forward, seizing her wrist before she could lunge further. His grip was steel. Her eyes went wide, fear flashing at last. "Look at me," Adrian growled. She resisted, but he forced her to meet his gaze. "You don't get to blame him. You don't get to blame me. This is on you. Every bruise, every fracture. You did this." Celine thrashed against his hold, her voice turning desperate, frantic. "You'll destroy everything if you tell them. Don't you see? They'll take Lucas away. They'll lock me up. Do you want a growing up without a mother?" Adrian's jaw tightened. His voice dropped to a whisper, colder than the storm outside. "He already has no mother." Celine froze, the words slicing deeper than any shout could. Her knees buckled, and she sagged against the wall, sobs tearing from her throat, not of guilt but of fear. The fear of losing control, of losing the facade she had built so carefully. Adrian released her wrist, letting her crumble. His chest rose and fell heavily, his mind racing. He had uncovered the truth, but the war wasn't over. The police, the courts, justice would come, but it wouldn't be clean. And Lucas, fragile, broken Lucas, would have to wake to a world where the person meant to protect him had been his greatest threat. Thunder cracked again, shaking the house. Victor's voice trembled from below. What happens now? Adrian looked down at the basement, then back at Celine, slumped against the wall. His eyes were hard, unyielding. What happens now, he said, his voice resolute, is that the truth comes out. And in that moment, as the storm raged on outside, Adrian made his decision. Celine's mask was gone forever. The world would see her for what she truly was. The storm had settled into a steady roar, sheets of rain battering the house. Lightning flared, briefly painting the living room in stark white before leaving it in shadow again. Celine Ward sat slumped against the wall, her hair tangled, mascara smudged, her chest heaving with uneven breaths. She looked small, broken, but Adrian Cale had seen this act before. He knew better. For several moments, silence clung to the air, heavy and suffocating. Victor's muffled sobs still drifted from the basement, pitiful and weak. The coward had exposed her, torn down her mask, and now she was scrambling to build another. Celine's head lifted slowly, her swollen eyes meeting Adrian's. Her voice came softer now, stripped of venom, replaced by something almost tender. Adrian, she whispered, please, you have to understand. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I lost control. You left me alone, and I didn't know what to do. I made mistakes, but I still love him. Adrian's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists at his sides. Love. His voice cut sharp, incredulous. You call locking him in an attic love? You call broken bones love? Her lips trembled, tears spilled, and she leaned forward, reaching for him. I was scared. Do you think I wanted this? Every day, I felt like I was drowning. You had your missions, your duty, your soldiers, and I had nothing but him. He reminded me of you. Every time he looked at me, I saw your face, your absence, your choices. I snapped. Her words dissolved into sobs, her hands covering her face. It was a performance, but beneath the tears, there was a dangerous kernel of truth. She did resent Lucas because he was half Adrian. Adrian's breath came heavy, his heart pounding with a storm of emotions. A part of him, the soldier who had learned to assess every angle, recognized what she was doing. This wasn't confession. It was strategy. She was weaponizing guilt, twisting her weakness into chains to bind him again. Downstairs, Victor's broken voice carried upward. Don't listen to her. She said it herself. Adrian. She told me. Lucas needed to learn his place. She didn't love him. She used me because she couldn't do it herself. His words cracked, but the conviction in them was clear. Celine's head snapped toward the basement door, her face twisting into rage. Shut up, Victor, she screamed, her voice shrill, feral. But as quickly as it flared, the anger faded, replaced again by the soft, trembling tone as she turned back to Adrian. I'm begging you, she whispered, crawling closer, her hands outstretched. Don't let them take him from me. Don't let the police put me away. He's my son too. He needs a mother. You know what foster care does to kids. Do you want him to suffer more? Do you want him to grow up hating both of us? Her words slithered into the cracks of Adrian's heart. She was clever, pulling on his guilt, his fear, the pieces of him that still wanted to protect Lucas from further pain. She knew exactly where to strike. For a moment, Adrian said nothing. He stared down at her, rain drumming harder against the roof, lightning flashing across her tear-streaked face. His mind replayed Lucas's whisper, the fragile voice clinging to life. Mom's man shut me in the attic. And he remembered the way Celine's eyes flicked to the basement when he first asked for Victor. Fear, not grief. Adrian's chest tightened, but his voice came calm, resolute. Lucas doesn't need a mother who sees him as a burden. He needs safety. He needs the truth. Celine froze, her face crumbling. The tears kept coming, but the act was failing. Beneath them, Adrian saw the steel of her true self. A woman terrified not of losing her son, but of losing control. "You'll regret this," she spat suddenly, her voice sharp as glass. The softness vanished, replaced with venom. "If you do this, Adrian, you'll ruin him. You'll ruin all of us." Adrian's eyes hardened, his voice final. "The only one who ruined him is you." Thunder cracked again, rattling the house like cannon fire. Celine's sobs filled the silence, raw and hollow. Victor's whimpers rose from below, guilt choking him, and Adrian stood between them, the storm inside him finally settling into something unshakable, resolve. The time for tears was over. The truth had been dragged into the open, and now Adrian would decide how the war ended. The house felt smaller now, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Celine sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, mascara streaked and drying, her sobs quieting into shallow, broken breaths. Victor remained in the basement, silent now except for the occasional shuddering gasp. Adrian Kale stood in the center of the living room, shoulders squared, his phone heavy in his hand. His thumb hovered over the screen for a long moment. Calling the police meant ending everything. Celine's freedom, Victor's presence in Lucas's life, any illusion of a normal family. But Lucas's fragile face in that hospital bed burned in his mind, his whispered confession echoing like a siren. "Mom's man shut me in the attic." Adrian pressed the button. The dial tone seemed to fill the entire house, loud and relentless. Celine's head snapped up, her bloodshot eyes going wide. "Adrian, no," she whispered, her voice sharp with panic. The line clicked. "County Dispatch, what's your emergency?" Adrian's voice was calm, steady, terrifyingly controlled. "This is Major Adrian Kale. I need police units at 428 Willow Creek Drive. Domestic abuse. Child endangerment. Suspect on site." Celine scrambled to her feet, crossing the room in a rush. "Stop! You can't do this! Please, Adrian!" She reached for the phone, but Adrian stepped back, his stare like steel. "It's done," he said flatly. Her face twisted, no longer pleading but furious. "Do you know what you just done? They'll take him from both of us. They'll put him through court hearings, social workers. You'll destroy what's left of him." Adrian's jaw clenched. "No, Celine, you destroyed him when you let this happen." For a moment, her rage faltered and fear flickered again in her eyes. Fear of losing control. Fear of being seen for what she truly was. From the basement, Victor's voice broke the silence, hoarse but resolute. "Tell them everything, Adrian. Don't let her talk her way out. She'll do it again." Celine's head snapped toward the open basement door, venom in her eyes. "You spineless traitor," she spat. "You think you're any better? You did what I asked. You put him there." Victor's sobbing reply floated up. "Because you told me to. I didn't want to." The front of the house lit up in a sudden wash of red and blue as the first police car screeched to a stop outside. The sound of boots crunching gravel followed, then pounding knocks at the door. "Police! Open up!" Celine froze like a deer in headlights. Adrian's face stayed hard, unmoving. He strode to the door and pulled it open. Two uniformed officers stood there, rain slickers dripping, their flashlights cutting through the dim interior. "Major Kale?" one asked. Adrian nodded once. "Inside." "She's there." Celine's breathing quickened. She took a step back, shaking her head violently. No, you can't take me. Adrian, please." Her voice cracked, desperation clawing at every word. The officers moved forward. "Ma'am, we need you to stay calm." Celine lunged suddenly, trying to push past them toward the back door. Adrian caught her by the arm, holding her firm until the officers restrained her. "Let me go," she screamed, thrashing, tears spilling fresh down her face. "He's lying. They're both lying." Adrian didn't respond. He stood still as the officers cuffed her, her screams echoing through the house like some twisted lullaby. Victor crept halfway up the basement stairs, his eyes wide, face pale. He watched silently as Celine was led outside into the rain, her sobs dissolving into the storm. For the first time since stepping off the Black Hawk, Adrian felt the faintest sense of order returning. Not peace, not yet, but the first step toward it. Lucas was safe now, but the war was not over. The flashing red and blue lights faded into the distance, swallowed by the storm. Rain washed across the empty driveway, erasing the last footprint from the chaos that had just unfolded. The house was silent again, too silent. Adrian Cale stood in the living room, chest rising and falling slowly, the storm outside finally easing into a steady drizzle. The house smelled of wet air and candle wax extinguished too soon. Celine's cries were gone, replaced by the hollow quiet of absence. Behind him, Victor Drennan stepped fully out of the basement for the first time, his shoulders slumped, eyes swollen. His face was pale, guilt carved into every line. He didn't look at Adrian at first, couldn't, until he finally forced himself to speak. "She's gone." Adrian turned, his expression unreadable. For now, Victor swallowed hard, wiping his face with the back of his hand. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought if I just did what she asked, it would be over. I didn't know Lucas would." His voice cracked, his words dissolving into silence. Adrian studied him for a long, tense moment. Part of him wanted to strike him, to make him feel every ounce of the pain he had caused. But another part, the part that had seen men break under the weight of war, recognized what Victor was now. Not a threat, not a monster, just a hollow shell of man who had let fear rule him. "You'll give a statement," Adrian said finally, his voice low but firm. "Everything you told me tonight, you'll tell the police. And if you try to run, I will find you." Victor nodded quickly, almost pathetically. "I will. I swear I will." Adrian didn't answer. He turned away, walking to the door without looking back. The drive to St. Catherine's Hospital was silent, the storm's fury now reduced to a soft drizzle against the windshield. The roads were slick, the world outside dim and reflective, like the night itself was grieving. When Adrian stepped into room 304, the beeping monitors and soft hiss of oxygen were the only sounds. Lucas lay still, his face pale but peaceful, a faint warmth in his cheeks now that hadn't been there before. Adrian lowered himself into the chair beside the bed. For the first time since he had left the jungle, his body felt heavy. The weight of the mission he had abandoned, the confrontation he had fought, the truth he had dragged into the open, it all settled on him at once. He reached out and took Lucas's small hand gently in his own. It was cold but not lifeless. The boy's chest rose and fell with each careful breath. "You're safe now," Adrian murmured, his voice breaking for the first time. The words hung in the air, meant as much for himself as for his son. Memories came unbidden, Lucas running barefoot across the yard, laughing with wild freedom. Lucas asleep in Adrian's lap during rare weekends home. Lucas calling him daddy with a voice full of trust. And then the image of Lucas locked in the attic, bruised, terrified, whispering his last plea for help. Adrian's throat tightened. He bowed his head, pressing his forehead to the edge of the bed. For years he had fought wars for strangers, put his life on the line for orders that sometimes barely made sense. But tonight, he had fought the war that mattered most, and won. The door creaked softly. A nurse peeked in, her face gentle. "He's stable," she said quietly. "If he keeps improving, he'll be out of ICU by morning." Adrian nodded, his jaw tight. "Thank you." The nurse hesitated before adding, "Police officers came by earlier. They said they'll need your full statement tomorrow. And they wanted you to know Celine's being held overnight." Adrian's gaze didn't waver from Lucas. "Good." The nurse gave a small nod and slipped away, leaving them in silence again. Adrian stayed there long into the night, holding his son's hand, waiting for the moment he would wake. And with every passing minute, the storm outside faded further, the night growing calmer, quieter, as if the world itself knew the worst was finally over. But Adrian also knew this wasn't the end. When Lucas woke, he would have questions, and Adrian would have to give him answers, no matter how much they hurt. Dawn eased through the blinds of room 304, thin gold lines across white sheets and pale skin. The storm was gone. Machines hummed softly, measured and calm, and Adrian Kale had not moved from the chair by his son's bed. His fingers still wrapped Lucas's hand, thumb tracing small circles over knuckles scuffed a child's way. Scrapes from climbing, from trying. Lucas stirred. A flicker beneath closed lids. Then his lashes lifted and two tired eyes found Adrian. For a heartbeat, the boy froze, as if afraid the picture would vanish. "Dad!" Adrian exhaled like a man breaking surface. "I'm here." Lucas's throat worked. The first sound was a dry rasp. Adrian raised water to his lips with the straw, steady as a surgeon. The boy sipped, winced, and leaned back. "Is it over?" Adrian held his gaze. "Yes." He didn't rush more words. He let the truth be carried in his eyes. "You're safe." "I'm not leaving." Footsteps paused at the door. Dr. Elena Frost glanced at the monitors, then at the boy, awake and aware. Relief softened her posture. "Good morning, Lucas," she said quietly. "Your numbers look steady. Pain might spike. We'll manage it. But you did the hardest part." She met Adrian's eyes and added low, "He's strong." When she left, silence settled again, warm now. Lucas studied his father's face with the seriousness only hurt gives child. "Did you fly here?" "I did," Adrian said, "and I'm staying." A single tear slid toward Lucas's ear. He swallowed. "I told the nurse. Mom's man, so you'd know." His voice was small, fragile with shame. "She told me. Never say her name. She said no one would believe me. And if I did, she'd make it worse after." He glanced away, fingers twitching against the blanket. "I thought if I said Mom, you might get mad at me. Or they'd send me back." The confession landed with the weight of a second storm. This one quiet and breaking inside. Adrian leaned closer, palms open, voice steady. "You did nothing wrong. You found a way to get help, even when you were scared. That's brave, Lucas. That's you." The boy's lower lip trembled. His breath hitched. "I tried the window," he whispered. "In the attic. I slipped." Adrian closed his eyes for a beat, seeing the fall in his mind, the small hands, the panic, the pain. When he opened them, his voice had only promise left. No more attics. No more dark. Just light. Just home. A gentle tap. A woman with a clipboard stepped in, badge clipped to her cardigan. "Ms. Jana Malik, Child Protective Services," she introduced softly. She kept her distance, careful with the room's air. "We've documented injuries. Officers obtained statements overnight." Her eyes moved between father and son. "Emergency protective custody is approved. Mr. Kale, Lucas goes home with you when he's discharged." Lucas looked quickly to Adrian, searching. Adrian nodded once, decisive. "Thank you." Jana added, "There'll be hearings. Therapy resources are ready. We'll coordinate." She left them to their morning. Adrian's phone vibrated. Vayner. He stepped to the window. "Sir." The colonel's gravel carried through the line. "He awake?" "He is." "A beat. Take family leave, Major." "Indefinite. Paperwork's already signed." The old soldier's voice lowered. "Bring him home." Adrian swallowed. "Yes, sir." He returned to the bedside. Lucas watched him with a flick of a smile, shy and uncertain. "Are we going to your house?" Adrian nodded. "To our house." He reached into his duffel and pulled a scuffed toy plane, blue plastic wings, a nicked nose. He sat on the blanket. "Remember this?" Lucas's fingers curled around it, careful with the four. The smallest light found his eyes. "You kept it. Always." Later, officers came by. Victor's signed statement matched Adrian's account and the nurse's notes. Celine was charged, child endangerment, conspiracy, assault by proxy. A restraining order was approved by noon. None of it felt like victory. It felt like oxygen finally reaching a starved room. When the ward quieted, Adrian leaned close. "There are going to be people who ask questions. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to, not without me. And we'll talk to someone whose job is making hard feelings smaller." "Deal." Lucas nodded, a fragile certainty. "Deal." Afternoon light widened the room. Dr. Frost returned with cautious good news. "Step down unit tomorrow, if pain stayed controlled." Adrian thanked her with a voice rougher than he meant. As shadows lengthened, Lucas blinked heavy, fighting sleep. Will you be here when I wake up? Adrian slid the chair closer until his forearm lay warm across his son's. Every time. Outside, a single bird tested the quiet left by the storm. Inside, a toy plane rested between two hands, one small, one scarred. Adrian looked at the boy who had survived both attic and night and made a promise aloud, so the walls would hear it too. No more missions that keep me from you, he said. From now on, we fly together. Lucas's breathing evened, sleep taking him gently. Adrian stayed, eyes on the window where the morning had begun. The war was over. There would be courts and counselors, signatures and slow days, but the worst had passed. And when the sun finally slid across the sheets, the room did not feel like an ICU anymore. It felt like a runway, clear, straight, and bright, built for two.